The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning, and it changed everything. Ambassador Daniel Hart stood alone in his office aboard the Horizon's Edge, reading the transmission for the third time. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. After 200 years of silence, the Galactic Council had finally reached out to humanity. They wanted Earth to join their great civilization. Daniel was 57 years old. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Every negotiation, every difficult conversation, every sleepless night had led to this single transmission glowing on his screen. The invitation humanity had been waiting for had finally come. He pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Katie, could you come to my office, please?" Lieutenant Katie Brooks arrived within minutes. She was young, barely 30, but Daniel trusted her more than anyone else on the ship. She had a sharp mind and an eye for details that others missed. When she saw the look on his face, she knew something important had happened. "We received the invitation," Daniel said simply. Katie's eyes went wide. She moved quickly to stand beside him, reading the message over his shoulder. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The words on the screen represented the dream of generations. Humanity would no longer be alone in the universe. They would have partners, allies, and access to technology beyond their imagination. "This is incredible," Katie whispered. "Keep reading," Daniel said. Katie scrolled through the document. The invitation was long, filled with legal language and complicated terms. At first, everything seemed wonderful. The Council offered trade agreements, scientific exchange, and protection from hostile species. But as Katie read deeper, her excitement began to fade. "Provisional species status," she read aloud. "No voting rights for 500 years. Military restrictions. Colonial oversight." She looked at Daniel with growing concern. "This does not sound like partnership." Daniel nodded slowly. He had noticed the same things. The invitation was not really an invitation at all. It was a contract, and the terms heavily favored the Council. Humanity would gain membership in name, but they would have no real power. Their military would be reduced to almost nothing. Their colonies would fall under Council control. They would be members of galactic civilization, but only as second-class citizens. "There is more," Daniel said. He pulled up a separate file he had been researching. "I looked into other species that accepted provisional status." Katie studied the data. The information was disturbing. Of the 47 species that had joined the Council as provisional members in the last 1,000 years, only 12 still existed as independent civilizations. The others had either been absorbed into larger empires or had simply disappeared from history. Their worlds were now owned by Council species. Their people worked in factories and mines, serving masters who had once promised to protect them. "They do not want partners," Katie said quietly. "They want subjects." Daniel walked to the window of his office. Outside, stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Somewhere out there, 300 species lived under the rule of the Galactic Council. They had technology that made human achievements look like children's toys. They had ships that could cross the galaxy in days. They had weapons that could destroy planets, and they wanted humanity to kneel. "What do we do?" Katie asked. "We go to the Council," Daniel replied. "We listen to what they have to say, and we make our decision based on what we learn." The journey to Centrum Prime took 3 weeks. The Horizon's Edge was fast for a human ship, but it was nothing compared to Council vessels that passed them along the way. Each time an alien ship appeared on their sensors, the crew felt a mix of wonder and unease. These were the beings who ruled the galaxy. Soon, humanity would have to face them directly. Daniel spent the journey preparing. He read everything he could find about the Council and its members. He studied their history, their politics, and their methods. The more he learned, the more concerned he became. The Galactic Council had existed for over 10,000 years. In that time, it had grown from a small alliance of 5 species to a massive organization controlling most of the known galaxy. On the surface, it appeared to be a democracy. Representatives from member species gathered to vote on important matters. Laws were debated and passed through proper procedures. But beneath the surface, power was concentrated in the hands of a few ancient species. The Cathari, the Vrethkai, and the Duranum had founded the Council, and they still controlled it. They held permanent seats on the High Council. They commanded the largest fleets. They owned the most valuable trade routes. Other species could join, but they would never truly belong. High Chancellor Varth was the current leader of the Council. He was Cathari, a reptilian species known for their patience and cunning. Daniel found recordings of his speeches and studied them carefully. Varth spoke beautifully about unity and cooperation. He promised prosperity for all who joined the Council family. But his eyes were cold, and his words were carefully chosen to hide more than they revealed. On the final night before they reached Centrum Prime, Daniel called a meeting with his senior staff. Commander Ryan Davis represented the military perspective. Dr. Megan Cole brought scientific expertise. Katie would handle research and analysis. Together, they would face the most important negotiation in human history. "I will not lie to you," Daniel told them. "The odds are against us. The Council has done this hundreds of times before. They know exactly how to pressure young species into accepting bad deals. They will offer us just enough to seem generous while taking everything that matters." "And why are we going?" Commander Davis asked. He was a soldier, direct and practical. He did not like walking into situations where the enemy held all the advantages. Daniel smiled slightly. Because refusing to show up would be worse. They would see it as weakness or fear. We need to look them in the eye. We need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. And then we need to make a choice that our children and grandchildren can be proud of. The next morning, Centrum Prime appeared on their screens. It was enormous, a space station the size of a small moon. Thousands of ships surrounded it, coming and going like insects around a hive. Lights glittered across its surface, marking the homes and offices of beings from across the galaxy. Katie stood beside Daniel on the bridge as they approached. "It is beautiful," she admitted. "It is," Daniel agreed. "But remember what it really is. A trap dressed in gold. Our job is to see through the beauty and find the truth underneath." The horizon's edge requested permission to dock. A moment later, a cold voice responded, welcoming humanity to the Galactic Council. Daniel took a deep breath. The real test was about to begin. The docking bay was larger than any building Daniel had ever seen on Earth. Ships from dozens of species rested in neat rows. Their designs so different from each other that they seemed to come from separate universes. Some were smooth and elegant, others were rough and industrial. A few looked almost alive, their hulls pulsing with strange lights. A delegation was waiting for them at the bottom of the boarding ramp. The aliens stood in perfect formation, their faces unreadable. The one in front was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large, dark eyes. He introduced himself as Secretary Velos, assistant to High Chancellor Varth. "Welcome to Centrum Prime," Velos said. His voice was smooth and practiced, like someone who had delivered the same greeting 1,000 times before. "The Council is honored by your presence." Daniel shook the offered hand. The alien's grip was cold. "Thank you for receiving us. Humanity is eager to learn more about the Council and its members." Velos smiled, but the expression did not reach his eyes. "Of course. We have prepared quarters for your delegation. The formal session will begin tomorrow morning. Tonight, you should rest and prepare." The quarters were impressive. Each member of the human delegation received a private suite filled with comfortable furniture and advanced technology. Food and drink were provided in abundance. Everything was designed to make them feel welcome and valued. But Daniel noticed things that others might miss. The rooms had no windows. The doors locked from the outside. The communication systems could only reach approved channels. They were guests, but they were also being watched and controlled. He gathered his team in his suite that evening. Katie had spent the day analyzing data she had gathered from public council records. Commander Davis had studied the station's security arrangements. Dr. Cole had examined the technology around them. "They are more advanced than us in almost every way," Dr. Cole reported. "Their medical technology could extend human life by centuries. Their energy systems make ours look primitive. If we had access to even a fraction of their knowledge, Earth could be transformed." "That is what they want us to think," Katie said. "They show us wonders to make us hungry. But the terms of membership would never give us real access. Provisional species receive basic technology only. The good stuff stays with the founding races." Commander Davis crossed his arms. "What about their military? Could they force us to join if we refused?" Daniel had wondered the same thing. Possibly. But conquering Earth would cost them ships and soldiers. It would make other species nervous about Council intentions. "I think they prefer to use softer methods. Pressure, manipulation, economic control. Why fight a war when you can convince someone to surrender peacefully?" They talked late into the night, preparing for what was to come. By the time Daniel finally slept, he had a clear picture of the situation. The Council held almost all the power. Humanity had very little leverage. But they still had one thing that could not be taken from them: the right to choose. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Daniel understood this the moment he stepped through the massive doors. The room was circular, with seats rising in tiers toward a distant ceiling. 300 species filled those seats, watching the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. At the center of the chamber, far below the elevated seats, was a small platform. This was where petitioners stood when addressing the council. It was positioned so that anyone standing there had to look up at the council members above them. The message was clear: know your place. High Chancellor Vara sat at the highest point, his reptilian features sharp in the bright lights. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes reflected the light like polished stones. When he spoke, his voice filled the chamber without any visible effort. "The Galactic Council welcomes humanity to these proceedings. You come before us as petitioners, seeking membership in our great civilization. This is an honor granted to few. Be grateful." Daniel stood on the petitioner's platform, his team behind him. He kept his expression calm and respectful. "We thank the Council for this opportunity. Humanity is eager to understand the terms of membership and to discuss how we might contribute to galactic civilization." Varath made a slight gesture, and a holographic display appeared in the air before Daniel. Text scrolled across it, dense paragraphs of legal language that would take weeks to fully understand. "These are the terms," Varath announced. "Standard provisions for a species of your development level. You will be granted provisional member status. This means you will have observer rights in council proceedings, but no voting power. Your military forces will be reduced to defensive capabilities only. Your colonies will accept council oversight committees. In exchange, you will receive protection from external threats, access to basic trade networks, and the guidance of elder species as you mature." Daniel listened carefully. The terms were exactly what he had expected, perhaps even worse. The Council wanted humanity to give up everything that made them independent. Their ships, their colonies, their freedom to grow and expand. In return, they would receive scraps from the table of greater powers. "How long does provisional status last?" Daniel asked. 500 years is standard," Varath replied. "After that period, your species will be evaluated for potential advancement." "And how many species have been advanced from provisional status in Council history?" The question caused a ripple of murmuring in the chamber. Vorath's eyes narrowed slightly. That is not relevant to these proceedings. With respect, Chancellor, it is very relevant. We are being asked to accept significant restrictions based on a promise of future advancement. We would like to understand how often that promise has been kept. Vorath stared at Daniel for a long moment. The silence in the chamber was heavy. Finally, the Chancellor spoke in a voice that had lost some of its warmth. 12 species have been advanced in the past 10,000 years. But you must understand, many provisional species prove themselves unworthy of advancement. They lack the patience, the discipline, the wisdom to grow beyond their limitations. Daniel nodded slowly. 12 out of 47. And he suspected those 12 had possessed something the Council wanted badly enough to reward. The rest had been used and discarded. Thank you for your honesty, Daniel said. My delegation requests a recess to consult with our government on Earth. This is a significant decision that affects all of humanity. Vorath waved his hand dismissively. Very well. You have 1 day. Use it wisely. The Council's patience is not unlimited. The human delegation returned to their quarters. Daniel immediately contacted Earth using their private communication system, one the Council did not know about. President Laura Kim appeared on the screen, her face tense with anticipation. I watched this session, she said. They want us to become their servants. Yes, Daniel agreed. The terms are designed to strip away everything that makes us who we are. If we accept, we will spend centuries under their control, assuming they ever let us go at all. President Kim was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. Can we survive without them, Daniel? Tell me honestly. Daniel thought about the vast chamber, the ancient species, the technology beyond human understanding. The Council was powerful beyond measure. Refusing them was dangerous. They could make life very difficult for humanity. But accepting was worse. Accepting meant giving up the future. It meant trusting beings who saw humans as nothing more than tools to be used. We have always survived, Daniel said. Ice ages, plagues, wars that nearly destroyed us. We survived because we refused to give up. Because we fought for our right to exist on our own terms. The Council is just another challenge. A bigger one, yes. But we have faced big challenges before. President Kim nodded slowly. Then I think we both know what we have to do. Daniel ended the call and looked at his team. Their faces showed a mixture of fear and determination. They understood what was coming. They knew the risk. Tomorrow, Daniel said, we give them our answer. The morning came too quickly. Daniel stood before the mirror in his quarters, adjusting his collar for the 10th time. His hands were steady, but his stomach was tight with tension. In less than an hour, he would speak words that would change the course of human history. There was no going back from what he was about to do. Katie knocked on his door and entered. She looked tired, as if she had not slept at all. The Council is assembling. They expect us in 30 minutes. How do you feel? Daniel asked. Katie managed a small smile. Terrified, but also strangely calm. Like we are finally doing something that matters. Daniel nodded. He understood exactly what she meant. For years, humanity had watched the stars and wondered about their place in the universe. They had dreamed of joining the great civilizations out there, of becoming part of something larger than themselves. Now, that dream was being offered to them, and they were going to refuse it, because some dreams, Daniel knew, were really traps in disguise. The walk to the council chamber felt longer than before. Other species watched them pass, some with curiosity, others with something that looked almost like pity. Word had spread that the humans had asked for time to consider. In the council's experience, this usually meant the petitioners were preparing to accept. Species that intended to refuse rarely hesitated. They did not understand humans. The chamber was full when Daniel and his team entered. Every seat was occupied. This was unusual, Katie had told him. Most sessions only attracted a fraction of the council's membership. But today was different. Today, everyone wanted to witness humanity's submission. High Chancellor Varth sat in his elevated position, his dark eyes watching the humans approach the petitioner's platform. His expression was confident, almost bored. He had done this many times before. He knew how the script went. "Ambassador Hart," Varth said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You requested time to consult with your government. That time has passed. The Council is ready to hear Earth's response to our generous offer of membership." Daniel stepped forward on the platform. He could feel 300 pairs of eyes watching him. The weight of their attention was almost physical. These beings had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had watched species rise and fall like waves on a beach. To them, humanity was just another small civilization about to be absorbed into their great machine. Daniel took a deep breath. "High Chancellor, members of the Council, on behalf of Earth and all her people, I thank you for this opportunity. The invitation to join the Galactic Council is a significant moment in our history. We have considered it with the seriousness it deserves." Varth nodded approvingly. This was how petitioners usually began. Grateful words followed by humble acceptance. "However," Daniel continued, and something in his tone made the chamber go silent. "After careful review of the terms offered, humanity must respectfully decline membership in the Galactic Council." For a moment, nothing happened. The words hung in the air like something impossible, something that could not exist. Then the chamber exploded. Voices rose from every direction. Species that had never agreed on anything were united in their shock. Some shouted in languages Daniel could not understand. Others simply stared at the humans as if they had grown second heads. The noise was overwhelming. Varth raised his hand, and slowly the chamber fell silent. His eyes had changed. The boredom was gone, replaced by something cold and dangerous. "Perhaps you misspoke, Ambassador. Or perhaps something was lost in translation. No species has ever declined council membership. It is not done." Daniel kept his voice calm. "There has been no mistake, Chancellor. Humanity has reviewed the terms carefully. We find them unacceptable. Membership under these conditions would require us to surrender our sovereignty, our military independence, and control of our own colonies. These are prices we are not willing to pay." "Prices?" Varth's voice rose. "We offer you protection from threats you cannot imagine. We offer you technology that would take your species 1,000 years to develop. We offer you a place in the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known." "And you speak of prices?" "Yes," Daniel said simply. "Everything has a cost. The cost of your offer is too high." The murmuring in the chamber grew louder. Daniel could see council members talking urgently to each other. Some looked angry. Others looked confused. A few, he noticed, looked almost impressed. Varth leaned forward in his seat. "You do not understand what you are doing. Species outside the council do not survive. The galaxy is dangerous. There are threats out there that would destroy your kind without a second thought. Without our protection, Earth will fall." Daniel had expected this argument. He had prepared his response carefully. "Chancellor, humanity has faced extinction many times. 70,000 years ago, our population dropped to less than 10,000 individuals. We survived. We have endured ice ages that covered our world in frozen death. We survived. We have fought wars that killed hundreds of millions of our own people. We survived. We have faced plagues, famines, asteroids, and disasters of every kind. We survived them all." He paused, letting his words settle over the chamber. We survived because we are stubborn, because we refuse to surrender when things get difficult, because we believe that freedom is worth fighting for, even when the odds are against us. The Council offers us safety in exchange for our soul. We choose to keep our soul and take our chances. Lorth sat back, his expression unreadable. You are making a terrible mistake. When the dangers come, and they will come, do not expect the Council to save you. We will not, Daniel replied. We will save ourselves, as we always have. He turned to his team. Katie was standing straight, her eyes bright with pride. Commander Davis had a slight smile on his face. Dr. Cole was watching the Council members with scientific curiosity, as if observing an interesting experiment. We are leaving now, Daniel announced. Earth wishes the Council well. Perhaps someday, when terms can be more equal, we might speak again. Until then, goodbye. The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. 300 species watched them go, unable to believe what they were seeing. They were almost at the door when Vorath's voice rang out one final time. You will regret this, Ambassador. Humanity will learn what it means to stand alone. Daniel stopped. He turned back to face the High Chancellor one last time. With respect, Chancellor, we have never been afraid of standing alone. We have been doing it for our entire existence. What we are afraid of is losing who we are. And that is exactly what your offer demanded. He turned away and walked through the doors. His team followed close behind. The corridor outside was empty. Their footsteps echoed off the metal walls as they made their way back to the docking bay. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. They had just done something that had never been done before. They had told the rulers of the galaxy that humanity would not kneel. When they reached the horizon's edge, Commander Davis finally broke the silence. Wow, that could have gone worse. Kay laughed, a sound of pure relief. How exactly could it have gone worse? They could have arrested us, Davis replied with a shrug. Or shot us. I was honestly expecting at least one of those. Dr. Cole shook her head in wonder. Did you see their faces? They had no idea how to respond. No one has ever done that to them before. Daniel listened to his team talk, but his mind was already racing ahead. The immediate danger had passed, but the real challenges were just beginning. The Council would not simply let humanity walk away. There would be consequences, pressure, possibly worse. But for now, in this moment, they had done something important. They had proven that humanity could not be bought or bullied. They had shown the galaxy that some species valued freedom more than safety. As the horizon's edge departed from Centrum Prime, Daniel watched the massive station grow smaller on the view screen. Somewhere in there, the most powerful beings in the galaxy were trying to understand what had just happened. He smiled slightly. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Humanity had just announced itself to the universe, not as servants seeking permission, but as equals demanding respect. The stars stretched out before them, vast and full of unknown dangers, but also full of possibilities. Daniel looked at those stars and felt something he had not felt in years: hope. The months following humanity's rejection were chaos for the Galactic Council. Nothing like this had ever happened before. For 10,000 years, species had accepted membership without question. Some had negotiated better terms, others had begged for faster acceptance, but none had simply walked away. High Chancellor Vorath faced intense criticism from all sides. Some council members blamed him for offering terms that were too harsh. Others accused him of being too soft, of allowing the humans to leave without consequences. Emergency sessions were called. Debates raged through the chambers. The unity that had held the council together for millennia began to show cracks. We should have forced them to accept, argued Councillor Dreth, a massive corvan with armored plates covering his body. A show of military strength would have reminded them of their place. And risk looking like conquerors? Replied Counselor Zeth, a Vrethkai whose insectoid features made her emotions impossible to read. Half the galaxy would question whether membership is truly voluntary. We would create more problems than we solve. Varath listened to the arguments without commenting. He had spent sleepless nights analyzing what had gone wrong. The humans should have accepted. Every calculation said they would accept. They were a young species with limited technology and no powerful allies. They needed the Council. They should have known they needed the Council, but they had walked away anyway. Reports from intelligence sources made the situation even more troubling. Human ships had been detected in regions far beyond their known territory. Their technology was advancing at a rate that surprised Council scientists. Most concerning of all, humanity had been quietly building relationships with species outside the Council's control. They have been planning this for years, Zeth observed during a private meeting with Varath. The rejection was not an emotional decision. It was strategic. Varath's claws tightened on his chair. Then we underestimated them. Yes, Zeth agreed. We did. The Council decided to send an observation mission to Earth. They wanted to see for themselves what humanity was doing. Were they struggling as expected? Were they regretting their decision? Or was something else happening that the Council needed to understand? Counselor Zeth volunteered to lead the mission. She was known for her analytical mind and her ability to see past surface appearances. If anyone could uncover the truth about humanity's situation, it was her. Her ship arrived in Earth's solar system 3 months after the rejection. What she found surprised her immediately. Human vessels patrolled the outer regions of the system with confident precision. Their movements were coordinated and professional. These were not the desperate defenders of a struggling civilization. These were the guardians of a people who knew exactly what they were doing. President Laura Kim welcomed Zeth to Earth personally. The human leader was gracious but firm. She allowed Zeth to tour their facilities, to meet their people, to see how they lived. But she made it clear that this was a courtesy, not a submission. You are welcome as a guest, President Kim said. But you are not here to evaluate us. Those days are over. Zeth spent 2 weeks on Earth. What she saw challenged everything she had believed about young species. Human cities were vibrant and creative, filled with art and music and ideas that seemed to burst from every corner. Their scientists were solving problems that had puzzled Council researchers for centuries. Their people were diverse and sometimes chaotic, but they were also resilient and determined. Dr. Megan Cole served as Zeth's guide for much of the visit. She showed the Council medical facilities where diseases were being cured using techniques the Council had never considered. She demonstrated energy systems that operated on principles Council scientists had dismissed as impossible. She explained humanity's approach to innovation. We share ideas freely, Dr. Cole explained. Knowledge is not hoarded by rulers or limited to certain classes. Anyone can contribute. Anyone can improve on what others have created. This is how we advance so quickly. Zeth found this concept strange. In Council society, knowledge was power. Those who possessed important information guarded it carefully. Sharing freely seemed reckless, even dangerous. Does this not lead to chaos? Zeth asked. What prevents dangerous individuals from using knowledge for harmful purposes? Dr. Cole smiled. Sometimes it does lead to problems. But we have found that the benefits outweigh the risks. When everyone can contribute, solutions come faster. When information is shared, mistakes are caught sooner. We trust our people to be responsible. Not all of them are, but enough of them are to make the system work. On her final day, Zeth met with Ambassador Daniel Hart. He had returned to Earth after the council session, and was now working to build humanity's network of independent allies. He welcomed Zeth to his office with genuine warmth. "I hope your visit has been informative," he said. Zeth studied the human carefully. He was older than many of the leaders she dealt with, but his eyes were sharp, and his mind was clearly active. "It has been. I confess, I expected to find a civilization struggling with its decision. Instead, I find one thriving." Daniel nodded. "We are not perfect. We have problems, disagreements, challenges that sometimes seem impossible to overcome. But we are moving forward on our own terms. That matters more to us than comfort or security." "Why?" Zeth asked. It was the question that had haunted her throughout her visit. Why choose difficulty when ease was offered? Daniel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Let me ask you something, counselor. In your species' history, was there ever a time when your people faced great challenges? When survival was uncertain and every day was a struggle?" Zeth considered the question. "Yes. Before we joined the council, my ancestors fought for every resource. Life was harsh and often short. And did that struggle shape who you are? Did it make your people stronger, more creative, more determined?" Zeth understood what he was suggesting. "You believe that difficulty makes species stronger." "I believe that freedom makes species stronger," Daniel corrected. "The freedom to struggle, to fail, to learn from our mistakes. When someone else controls your path, you never discover what you are truly capable of. The council offers safety, but safety has a cost. It makes species dependent. It makes them forget how to stand on their own." Zeth returned to Centrum Prime with a report that disturbed the council deeply. Humanity was not struggling. They were flourishing. And they were not alone. 17 independent species had begun formal trade relationships with Earth. Another dozen were in discussions. A new alliance was forming in the shadows of the Council's territory. "They are building something," Zeth told the Council. "Something that could rival us in time." Vorath received the news in silence. His plans had failed. His predictions had been wrong. Humanity was not crawling back to beg for membership. They were creating an alternative. "What do you recommend?" he asked Zeth. The counselor chose her words carefully. "I recommend we watch and learn. The humans have shown us something important. Not all species want what we offer. Perhaps it is time to consider why." Vorath dismissed her with a wave. But as she left the chamber, she could see the worry in his ancient eyes. The Galactic Council had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had faced wars, plagues, and rebellions. They had survived every challenge, but they had never faced anything quite like this. A species that chose to walk away and found something better on the other side. 10 years passed. In that time, everything changed at the Galactic Council, which had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, faced its greatest crisis. 3 species formally withdrew their membership, citing the human example as inspiration. A dozen more demanded reform terms. The economy that had been built on the exploitation of provisional members was crumbling. Trade routes that had once brought wealth to the founding races were now being bypassed by new networks that did not require council approval. High Chancellor Vorath had aged badly. His scales had lost their shine, and his movements had become slow and heavy. The confidence that had once made him seem invincible was gone. He spent his days in emergency meetings, trying to hold together an alliance that was falling apart from within. Meanwhile, Earth had transformed into something unprecedented. What had begun as 12 colonies had grown into the human commonwealth, spanning 42 worlds. Human ships traveled routes that council vessels had never explored. Human technology, built on the foundation of free innovation, had advanced beyond what anyone had predicted. But humanity had not achieved this alone. The alliance they had built with independent species had evolved into something greater. The Free Stellar Compact, as it was now called, united 31 species in a voluntary partnership based on mutual respect and shared benefit. The compact operated differently from the Council. There were no provisional members. There were no restrictions on military development or colonial expansion. Each species governed itself while cooperating on matters of common interest. Trade was fair. Knowledge was shared. Disagreements were resolved through discussion rather than force. Ambassador Daniel Hart had retired from official service 5 years earlier. He lived now in a small house on Earth. Surrounded by gardens, he tended himself. His hair had turned white, and his steps were slower than they once were. But his mind remained sharp, and he still followed galactic events with keen interest. One morning, a message arrived at his house. It was from High Chancellor Vorath, requesting a private meeting on a neutral station. Daniel considered refusing. He had no obligation to speak with the being who had once tried to turn humanity into servants. But curiosity won out. He wanted to see what had become of the Chancellor after 10 years of watching his empire crumble. The neutral station was small and unremarkable, chosen specifically because it belonged to no major power. Daniel arrived first and waited in a simple meeting room. When Vorath entered, Daniel barely recognized him. The mighty Chancellor who had once looked down on humanity from his elevated throne now moved like a broken creature. His scales were dull. His eyes, which had once burned with cold intelligence, were tired and sad. He sat across from Daniel without ceremony or pride. "Thank you for coming," Vorath said. His voice was softer than Daniel remembered. "I was curious," Daniel admitted. "After everything that happened, I wanted to see you again." Vorath was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his words surprised Daniel. "I have spent 10 years trying to understand what happened. How a young species, with no powerful allies and limited technology, managed to bring the Council to its knees. I have analyzed every decision, every conversation, every moment of our interaction, and I still do not fully understand." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "What do you want to understand?" "How did you know?" Vorath asked. "How did you know the Council would falter? How did you know your path would succeed? You had no guarantees. You took an enormous risk. If you had been wrong, your species would have suffered terribly." Daniel considered the question carefully. It deserved an honest answer. "We did not know," he said. "We had no guarantees. We took a risk because we believed it was the right thing to do. Not because we were certain we would succeed, but because we were certain we could not live with the alternative." Vorath seemed troubled by this answer. "You gambled the future of your entire species on a belief?" "Yes," Daniel said simply. "Humans do that sometimes. We believe in things we cannot prove. We hope for things we cannot guarantee. We fight for causes that seem impossible. This is who we are. It is both our greatest weakness and our greatest strength." Vorath stared at Daniel for a long moment. "The Council is dying. Not quickly, but surely. Every year, more species leave or demand changes. The foundation we built over 10,000 years is cracking. Soon, there will be nothing left but ruins." "That is not necessarily a bad thing," Daniel said gently. "Endings make room for new beginnings. The Council served a purpose for a long time. Perhaps it is time for something different. Something like your compact? Something like it? Or something better. The galaxy is large enough for many different approaches. Not every species wants the same things. Perhaps the mistake was trying to force everyone into a single system." Vorath was quiet again. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I came here to ask if humanity would consider joining the Council now. We could offer better terms. Equal partnership. Full voting rights from the beginning. Everything you asked for originally. Daniel smiled slightly. It was not a mocking smile, but a sad one. 10 years ago, that offer might have been tempting, but now? Chancellor, the Council would have more to gain from joining us than we would from joining you. The compact is growing. The Council is shrinking. The mathematics are simple. Voreth's shoulders sagged. He had known this would be the answer, but he had needed to ask anyway. However, Daniel continued, the compact welcomes any species that wishes to join as equals, including the founding races of the Council. If the Cathari, the Vrethkai, and the Daranum wanted to participate in something new, they would be welcome. Not as rulers, but as partners. Voreth looked up, surprised. You would accept the species that tried to enslave humanity? The compact does not hold grudges, Daniel said. What matters is not what species did in the past, but what they are willing to do in the future. Everyone deserves the chance to choose a better path. Daniel stood, signaling that the meeting was ending. Think about it, Chancellor. Talk to your people. The offer stands. A second chance is always available to those willing to take it. He left Voreth, sitting alone in the meeting room. An ancient being confronted with a future he had never imagined. The journey back to Earth took several days. Daniel spent most of it looking at the stars through his cabin window. So much had changed since that first invitation arrived 10 years ago. Humanity had gone from a minor species on the edge of the galaxy to a leader of a new alliance. The future that had seemed so uncertain was now full of possibility. When he arrived home, his granddaughter, Sophie, was waiting at the spaceport. She was 16 now, tall and curious and full of questions about everything. She had her mother's eyes and her grandfather's determination. How was the meeting? She asked as they walked toward his house. Daniel thought about Voreth, sitting alone with the ruins of his empire around him. He thought about all the species that were now free because humanity had been brave enough to walk away. He thought about the future that was being built, one relationship at a time. It was interesting, he said. An old enemy asked for help. I offered it. What happens next is up to them. Sophie looked up at the sky. Through the transparent dome above the spaceport, ships from a dozen species were visible, crossing between the stars. Free citizens of a galaxy humanity had helped remake. Do you think they will accept? She asked. I do not know, Daniel admitted. Change is hard. Giving up power is even harder. But hope is a powerful thing. Sometimes it is enough to make the impossible happen. They walked together in comfortable silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere far above, the Galactic Council was considering its future. Somewhere out there, new species were discovering the Free Stellar Compact and wondering if they too could be part of something different. Daniel put his arm around his granddaughter's shoulders. We walked away from one future, he said quietly. And in doing so, we built a better one. Sophie smiled. That is a good story, Grandpa. It is, Daniel agreed. And the best part is, it is not over yet. Above them, the stars continued their endless dance. Bright points of light, each one a sun with worlds circling around it. Worlds that were now connected in ways they had never been before. Not through force or fear, but through choice. Through respect. Through the simple belief that every species deserved the chance to write its own story. Humanity had chosen freedom. And in doing so, they had helped the galaxy discover the same truth. Some futures are not given. They are built. And the builders are always those brave enough to walk away from what is easy and reach for something better. The story was not over. It was just beginning.